So today we're going to Kelly College, now called Mount Kelly College, where I injured myself 13 years ago, or just over 13 years ago. I've not been there since my injury, and I feel like it could be quite an emotional day for me. But I'd love to go back and just kind of complete the story from like where I had my injury, sort of seeing the spot again. I'm hoping that this will be a positive day, and it just shows that how far I've come in life, and I want to take other people for that journey to show people that yes, there's some really traumatic things, and if you're in this position where you've had something traumatic like this occur, or you're with someone that's had this sort of life-changing event occur, that actually there is sort of light at the end of the tunnel. When I actually injured myself, it was a very normal day. I remember getting on the coach, messing around on the coach I was a school student at the time. I remember being with my friend dancing. It was all just very jovial. I don't remember, didn't have any kind of hint that anything bad would happen that day. I remember pulling up to Kelly College, and we actually got changed in the pavilion that day. I'd never got changed in the pavilion before when we'd been and played there. A really nice building as far as I remember, but it'd be interesting to see if my memory serves me correct about sort of the position of the building in relation to the rugby pitch and things. But I was desperate to play. I loved playing, and yeah, I was just really keen to get out there. So I remember doing some stretches before the game just to sort of loosen that muscle up. In the actual game itself, I remember playing absolutely amazingly. Probably the best game of rugby I'd played. I even commented on it sort of to people in the team at half time that yeah, I seemed to be on it today. We were winning the game. We'd actually basically won the game when it happened. It was, I think, the last play or thereabouts when I injured myself. So even if the other team had scored, we would have won the game. But I remember picking the ball up from the back of the ruck. Probably could have even kicked it out at this point. But as I picked it up, I went to drive forwards or run forwards. As far as I remember it, someone grabbed the back of my shirt, and at the same time, someone tackled my legs, which meant that my body sort of went downwards. My head hit the ground. I just lost all feeling in my legs. I remember it being like a whooshing feeling from my toes up my body, and almost instant. And as I hit the ground, sort of screaming, I can't feel my legs. The referee blew the whistle, stopped the game instantly, and the nurse ran on to help me. I remember I'd been reading a few weeks before about a guy called Matt Hampson who'd also injured himself playing rugby, and what I'd read sounded very much like what I was going through. So I remember saying to the nurse, I can't feel my legs, am I ever going to walk again? And her saying something about that, well, it's too early to say anything at this stage, let's just get you in the ambulance. She made sure I didn't move, even though I was in pain on my shoulder. She was just sort of, you've got to stay still until the ambulance arrives. I'd say the actual neck break didn't seem to hurt, it was just like a loss of feeling. Eventually the ambulance did arrive after about 40 minutes. It felt like forever lying on that pitch. I remember just kept saying, I want my mum, who was out in Ethiopia. I cried a bit on the pitch. It was all quite traumatic at the time. It was emotions that you just don't expect to go through. When the ambulance did arrive, they put me on a spinal board. I remember being turned, and they had help from one of my school friends, a guy called Rags, who I later saw in hospital, because he'd been a surf lifeguard for a while, so he was trained in doing sort of spinal board movements. A bit of a blur from that point on. I got in the back of the ambulance with my teacher, who was also my rugby coach, and we sort of drove to hospital, but I don't remember too much about that journey apart from that they were going slowly, and the ambulance team were fantastic. And when I got to hospital, they sort of started cutting clothes off me, explained a bit about what was going on, but I was out of it by this point. I just think my brain was starting to sort of shut down from the trauma. My granddad came in to visit me. He'd driven up from Cornwall because I was injured in Devon. And when he got there, I just remember him coming in the room and then he disappeared, and I thought he'd gone back out. I couldn't turn my head or anything, so everything was a bit difficult to see what was going on. Turned out he'd collapsed from the shock of seeing me in this position. But I wouldn't find that out till much later on, after I'd sort of had my operation and had sedation and had pneumonia multiple times. But that's another story. I then remember my friend Rags coming in and talking to me and like just sort of calmed me down really for a bit. And then at that point, I don't remember anything. I think I talked to doctors and things about this, and they hadn't sedated me yet at this point, but my brain just shut off. And I think it tried to shut off from the trauma of what was to come next, really. So in one way, I feel like that's good. I don't want to bring those memories back, but it's sort of quite crazy how the body can kind of just shut off from the trauma. When I look back, the reason that my granddad sort of collapsed in shock was actually that his own daughter, my auntie, so my mum's sister, was also disabled. She got disabled through what they believe was meningitis, either in the womb or early after childhood. But then seeing me go through something similar, where I think he'd already been told that I probably wouldn't walk again and things weren't looking good, he was sort of seeing what happened to his daughter happen again. Now, my auntie was an amazing woman. She couldn't talk or anything, but she was lovely and had a great life. They took her everywhere. And my granddad and my grandma were both really sort of progressors of making people, because this was back in like times where people didn't go out with disability, they really did push her to do things. So I was very proud that they were my granddad, but also when they saw me injured, they were really supportive afterwards. So although he collapsed and shocked at that first moment, they were amazing people and they were so supportive after my injury. I came and lived with them for a bit because their house was accessible, and couldn't have been better. So although I say he was, and he knew that it would be a life-changing moment, but that didn't stop him from giving me the best outcome at the end. I'm not too sure how I'm feeling about today. It's going to be a weird one. I feel like it's the ending of a journey that I want to go back and see the place that I was at. I know my mum's never seen it before. I feel like she's probably going to be a bit more emotional than I am in some ways, but I also don't know how it's going to hit me when I get there. I feel quite calm about it. I feel like it's going to be more enjoyable actually than anything. And just more of like does my memory serve me correctly, or are there things that I'm just completely made up, which will be quite an interesting sort of psychological thing for me. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be too emotional, but we will see.
Well, strangely, I remember every detail about that day, pretty much from the start of the day where we went shopping out in Ethiopia, over to an area, bought a microwave, had a hamburger lunch, and rescued a cat. Then that evening we were going out, and at the last minute I picked up my phone that I'd only just got, and I thought, nobody knows my number actually. I think 2 people knew the number, and one of them was my mum and dad. So I don't know why I felt the impulse to pick it up, but we arrived at a dinner party and I put the phone was with me, and it started ringing, and I thought, oh, that's really strange, and it was my father, and he said something had happened and we couldn't work out what, but to get straight to the airport. So we did this mad dash to get passports and a handbag literally, and dashed to the airport, not really knowing what was really happening, but just we were told it was bad, and we had to get back to England right away. So that was that day. In my head I imagined this very bleak field that stretches off to infinity, because I wasn't there at the time and I have never been there since, and it's something we've thought about for a long time, and it sort of was laid on my heart this year, and Max's heart, to go, and I think we're in a sort of stronger position emotionally, 13 and a half years on, to go and perhaps lay some ghosts to rest and see the place that really finished, I would say, one book of our lives, and then the next book began.
very strange being back here after all this time. My main memory actually when I first arrived was this car park, just messing around with my friends before we went to play the rugby game, and then going in the front door over here to the school before being led down to the pavilion to go play. But yeah, it doesn't feel like sad to be here. It's a very sunny day, just as it was when I injured myself. Actually, about the same weather, gorgeous, bit of wind, and it's a beautiful school, I have to say. Like, it's, if you're going to injure yourself somewhere, it's a very beautiful place to do it. The only bit that's different to what I remember it so far is that the school fields seem a lot lower down to what the school was. I remember there being a drop, but not maybe as far much of a walk down as it actually is.
Well, it's strange being here, and I'm really glad it's a sunny day and very different in reality to in my mind. As I said, it was just a bleak field stretching to infinity. It's actually all very green and lush and beautiful trees, and a beautiful place actually.
When we got to Kelly College, we were greeted by Fran Reed, the Development and Alumni Manager. She'd been exceptionally helpful in organising for us to visit after we requested it a few months before. We walked together down to the pavilion where I got changed the day of my accident. She had also very kindly organised for two of the matrons who were on duty that day to come and meet me. Chris and Lorraine both helped assist me when I was injured and really wanted to meet me to see how I'd got on since that horrible day.
So, Max, this is Christoph, who's still employed at Mount Kelly.
Nice to see you.
Max
Nice
Levine
to see
and
you.
Lorraine, who was the matron on duty at the time.
I was on duty.
Yeah, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you.
After meeting the ladies, we walked to the spot of the accident alone before they rejoined us there. Intrigued, but the pavilion in my memory was more
Closer.
closer to the pitch, but not far away. From what I remember. Yeah, there was a wall. I was right. I was staring at the wall for 40 minutes.
Where did they have in mind then?
I was trying to find the spot.
Once they came for you, they even stayed as the ambulance.
Yes, but until waiting for the others to move, so don't move.
Yeah,
And I was lying on my left hand side,
yeah.
facing the walls. I won't get it exactly right, but I reckon I get it fairly close. That's obviously it would have been marked out for rugby that day, not football. But I'm going to suggest it was about here, somewhere in this 10 metre vicinity I would suggest.
Which way were you running?
So I picked up the ball there
Yeah.
and ran towards, it must have been a little bit further down I'd say. But the wall seemed quite high, so yeah, I would maybe about here.
But the wall finished there, didn't it?
Yeah, but I'm thinking like how high the wall was.
Oh yeah.
It might have been a bit further down, somewhere. So it's hard to pick out because you've not got the rugby lines. But yeah, I reckon it must be somewhere around here. Yeah, about just beyond the halfway. So I picked up the ball there and I ran this side of the ruck. So imagine there's like a big pile of bodies there, and I must have hit the ground somewhere in this area. And I was hit the ground. I was facing that way, with my head up that end and my legs this way. And yeah, the matron and the nurses.
Facing towards the pavilion a
The
bit.
nurses were there. Yeah, but I couldn't see the pavilion because I was kind of looking that way because I could sort of sense the next game over was finishing
Yeah.
because the other game was going on
Yeah.
in the next door field. And I remember Charlie Homer's dad, I forgot his name, Mr. Homer.
Yeah.
He was stood over there somewhere on the sidelines, and then yeah, the matron ran on straight away from that. They were all stood on that side of the pitch, I guess in the shade. And I also remember, like, at one point the ball kind of got kicked right down in that corner over there, like almost onto the road. And it might have even been on the road. I remember having to leg it to get the ball. And we, like, because I managed to get there fast, we managed to get a good attacking play going that scored a try in the first half. I didn't score, but somebody scored off it.
When you were playing that end.
Yeah, when we were going that way, and in the second half we were going up this way. And there was a guy in the opposite team, I think he was called Harry, I don't know, but he had bright yellow boots on the whole game. I sort of remember him being quite a good player. What do you think?
It just sort of seems like another world away, really, doesn't it? I was just looking there was a little butterfly flying over the grass. Significant distance.
Do you feel sad?
I do. I do.
Yeah. Have a hug.
I could probably howl.
Have a howl as well. I remember the ambulance parking up just behind me somewhere, and then they did the spinal board here and carried me into the back of the ambulance that way. And as I say, if you just point at that wall, I sort of remember staring at that wall a lot. I thought I'd be able to pick out the brick, but I think it's changed a lot with the ivy. I remember there being trees, but I don't really remember the trees, strangely. And yeah, and then Rag stood sort of above me here somewhere because I was looking that direction. And Mr. Davies coming over and saying something, but I don't remember what he said. But I know Mr. Davies the next day had to do a marathon and he wasn't sure what to do because he was in such shock. He was my rugby coach. But I think he went and did the marathon anyway just to clear his head.
I remember he did do the marathon. He did actually do the marathon.
It was like the Eden Marathon or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
So it was
remember.
a hilly one as well.
Yeah, I remember Mr. Austin, I think, saying that he did it, and he said, I don't know how he did it, and I think he didn't know how he did it. It was like in autopilot, but
Yeah. We've been training for a
I
month.
think he'd been
or
up
a
all
couple
night
of
as
months.
well, hadn't
Yeah.
you? Shot. Yeah. I just, as I'm stood here, I just think how scared Max must have been, and he's just such a brave person, and he had no choice to be brave really on that day, but his bravery over 13 years is just incredible.
I don't see how it's bravery because you don't really have much choice in the moment.
In the moment you don't, but you've chosen to be brave and positive.
I just remember thinking,
And-
am I going to die? But then, like, yeah, not really knowing, but kind of going, oh well.
And you were saying about that rush of energy.
Yeah, I said
But-
that on the video earlier, that
Yeah.
it was like, it went from my toes up to my... felt like everything actually at one point. Probably because they say you go into like a shock, don't you? And then you start feeling more afterwards. So you'll be alright.
What do you mean I'll be alright?
You seem more traumatised than I was. See, that's where time, I guess, is completely infinite, isn't it? When you're lying there, you have no idea.
No.
So I thought it was about 45 minutes.
No.
and I
How
just-
long was it?
Oh, good few hours. Yeah.
Hours that he was
Yeah.
lying there.
And there was 4 hours. No, I
There
don't
was
remember
4
that
hours.
at all.
Yeah, because I think a couple
Because
come
we
in,
had
to keep him straight,
Yes.
and then we helped them log roll you. Yeah.
And do you remember getting into the ambulance? And
I remember getting into one of them, and I got
Right.
into sort of the back end, but I know it was facing that direction. I
Yeah.
believe.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Run out that way.
And, I remember doing the log roll and things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was down at your feet. You were probably
I think-
knees,
I
and then
think,
somebody
yeah.
else. We were all sort of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird experience. But
Yeah.
Do you actually remember what actually happened? It was not very nice to
So
You
I
were
saw-
you were all in a
I
what they
came
call
out
a
the
ruck.
back of a ruck,
Yes.
and I don't know whether, but how I remember it. But I've also talked to some of the guys from the other team, and they say that no one really quite knows because it will happen so quickly.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like someone grabbed the back of my collar at the same time as someone took my legs.
Oh,
So my feet went up, and my head went down.
yeah.
Because
But I
I
might
ran
be wrong.
over because I heard the scream,
Yeah,
and when I got to you,
yeah,
you said, "Can you put my legs down?"
yeah.
That your
makes
legs
sense.
weren't taking me maybe down on the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I sort of remember a rush of energy. Just it felt like the lights had turned off,
Yeah.
and that was probably when I was saying to you, my legs were up in the air because I couldn't feel
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember saying that.
Yeah.
We all remember different little things.
Yeah.
don't we?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So this is quite a powerful week because on Tuesday the 3 of us scattered my mum's ashes, and I have just brought, it's rather wilted on the journey, but there was a particular rose that Mum used to look out at when she was having a cup of tea in bed in the mornings. It was her favourite rose, and this is thank you to Mum and Dad for all the support they gave to me and to Max and to Billy. So I'm going to sprinkle the roses, petals on the spot. Thank you, Mum and Dad, for always being there for us. And it's with gratitude that I say I'm so blessed to have Max. And thank you.
Soppy bit again.
The soppy bit.
Yeah.
Now, who were there 13
Yeah,
years
yeah.
ago. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I wasn't. I was a hockey coach, but
Okay, yeah.
no, obviously I recall the
The incident.
day, and
Yeah.
it's lovely to see you. And I've read your backstory as well. It's
Yeah.
inspiring,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
absolutely inspiring,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And
Yeah.
you're welcome. And look, you brought the weather with you as
Yeah.
well. Well done.
It was very. I was saying a very similar day when I injured myself. I seem to remember it was like, although it was October, it was actually a really sunny day.
Yeah.
Strange. But yeah, so it's nice to see it in the sun again.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we've just got home. It's been a long day. I thought it was really interesting. It was really great to meet the two matrons that were there on the day. Quite emotional. I think they were quite emotional too. But I had a really good time. I thought it was really interesting to see from the point of view now, 13 years on, how my memory had somewhat evaded me, but I think overall I was fairly accurate with what had happened. And yeah, I think it just really did sort of complete that cycle of like thought process. And it was really nice to show my mum. I know she was very upset, as you've seen on the video, but I think that was also a good thing for her to have done. And it, yeah, hopefully brings some closure to the whole event. So yeah, if anyone else was out there worried about going back to where they injured themselves, I would definitely recommend doing it when you're ready. Don't do it too early, but I definitely recommend doing it.
Yeah, it's been a long day, very emotional. I'm really so glad I went, and as I said earlier, just this field that was in my head grey and bleak. I guess I could have looked it up on the internet, but I was never feeling up to actually kind of Googling the site. It was really good to see it, and it was very beautiful with all the trees, and it was lovely actually to meet the matron and actually to say just a big thank you to the main matron who was there with you at the day and who actually took really good care of you. And we had this conversation about how the fields in my mind seemed so bleak, and she was sort of in tears, and I said, and I guess when Max got taken off in the ambulance and you didn't really know the outcome of his life, to meet him, you can see that if you imagined his future was bleak, it very much isn't. And she was like just saying yes, yes. Yeah, so interesting to go back and to have kind of the chronology put into place, because I did sort of used to wonder why it seemed like we'd been told quite late to get the flight back and nobody knew what was going on. But in fact, Max had lain on the pitch for 2 hours, the matron said, not the 45 minutes, which seemed long enough. And that's kind of what upset me, really, to think of him lying there sort of scared. And when we're on the pitch, I very much had the thoughts of my parents and how supportive they were. But actually, I'd also like to say a big thank you to Max's other set of grandparents, who also have been very supportive over the years for Max and myself. So thank you to all the grandparents here and those that have passed away as well. Hopefully this might sort of help other people who are wondering about going back. As Max says, I think you have to be in a strong place to go back, but if you're in that place, then it's really helpful.